Thanks, Shane. You know, when you're about to do a presentation, write up a presentation, you're looking at a blank screen and you don't really know where to start. I knew the topic was organizational resilience. So what I tend to do is I Google famous quotes from people, and I came across a quote from Bobby Unser, who was, how many? Was it 3 or 5-time Indy 500 champion. And he wrote, "Success is where preparation and opportunity meet." And that really resonated with me because I decided I'd switch the first word to organizational resilience is where preparation and opportunity meet. And that's the story I'll share with you today. And it was funny because after I did the slide, it was shortly before Scott Dixon had his accident, 350 kilometers an hour up in the air. And he was, very smart. He followed the rules. He stayed within his little safety tub. And he followed the directions where you put your hands on your thighs and you relax. Now, can you imagine? Now, that is resilience. I'm not quite sure what the opportunity was, but he certainly showed us resilience. So I'm going to share with you today the ongoing journey that Critchlow is undertaking towards organizational resilience, and towards is a very important word. So we're a small company, and I was a bit shy about speaking here today because most of you would be from large corporates or large government agencies. But then I thought, well, I actually represent 95% of the businesses in this country. They're all small to medium enterprises. So we have about 30 people on staff at Critchlow, and we've actually purposely geographically diversified. Thanks, Rob Jameson, for that term. So we've got people in Wellington, in Auckland, in Sydney, and in Perth, and we do that purposefully. You might be thinking that it might be easier for us to be resilient than, say, large organizations, but I'll challenge you on that because what Erica says, which is any organization, regardless of size and structure, can build planned and adaptive resilience capabilities. So planned and adaptive is what I'm going to share with you today. So we're experts in location intelligence and also experts in emergency management, business continuity, and notification. And there's 3 things that we focus on at our company, things that we need to keep going day by day, and things that we do not stop when disruption occurs. And number 1 is that we focus on our greatest assets, and those are our people. Secondly, we provide 24/7 support for most EMAs and utilities and big corporates in New Zealand and Australia. So we have to keep our support going without fail. And thirdly, we're a small business. Cash flow is very important, and the commitments that we make to our customers for time and scope and cost is imperative. So we actually need to keep our projects running despite any kind of a disruption. Very good. So I'll take you through a quick timeline, starting a few years ago when I joined Critchlow all the way through to today. So in the first phase, we did have some plans in place, but I don't think they were really that comprehensive. So they sent me on the BCI accreditation program, and I got certified a year ago and immediately ran back to the office and disrupted everybody and told them this is what we're doing. So we went back and we took a look again at our policy. I set out a program. We pulled our plans apart, did the analysis, and then decided the plans we truly needed. And what else have I got there? Yep, we designed it, and then we implemented the plan, and we review the plans quite regularly. But the one thing I couldn't get done was validate. I couldn't get the guys to agree to a time that we would do an exercise. Things were always much more important than that. You're probably familiar with people pushing off these things. So yeah, that was a little bit frustrating for me. But then we had the earthquake, followed the next day by the floods in Wellington. And once Steve, my husband, was able to get me out from underneath the dining room table, we invoked our communications plans, so we were immediately communicating to staff, checking in on their safety and their well-being, asking them to come back to us. And later on, we sent another communique saying that you will be, at home today. If you can work, cool. If you can't, that's okay. And then later on in the day, we made the decision that people would also stay at home the following day. We began receiving engineers' reports, which were reassuring to us because they were, aside from one window at 22 the terrace that was kind of by Steve's desk, was kind of hanging there. Everything else was fine in the building other than just a bit of messy plaster and paint and such. And we invoked our business continuity plan and got straight to work. On the Friday, about noon hour, the management team sat down and we sort of reflected on what the previous 4.5 days have been like. Now, some people, when it comes to earthquakes, they're very stoic. And then there's people like me, you actually have to pull me out from under the dining room table. And so we were looking at the safety and the happiness and the well-being of everybody in our team based in Wellington. And we thought, nah, we're going to actually have them work remotely the following week. And I say remotely purposefully because some people have a home office, but others actually live in a small apartment and it's really uncomfortable to be there, so we could make other arrangements for people. So we pulled everybody into Area 51, which is our big meeting room, and we had a chat with everyone who said, we want you to actually work remotely so you can pack up your stuff, grab your laptops, go home, and you know, just until further notice, just know that you're going to be working out of the office. So it was really good because I said to the management team before we broke, I said, well, we're actually not just invoking the plan. I'm running this as a 5-day exercise, purposely as an exercise. So if we had just worked from home for those 5 days, we would not have purposely captured the lessons. We would not have purposely made, you know, observations about how things worked. So for me, I was thrilled. I finally got to complete the life cycle of our business continuity program. So on the following Monday, everyone came back to work, and on that very same day, as we went back to BAU, I held a debrief and I captured the lessons. And today, where we're at is that we're validating. So we did our debrief, we've applied our lessons learned, or some are still in flight. We have gone back and reanalyzed some of our core processes and continually maintaining our plans. And I've got an exercise plan for a few months' time. So the big takeaways for us were great to have business continuity and disaster recovery plans in place. We stood up our emergency management guy who's based in Perth, so it happened on like midnight on a Sunday. It's 5 o'clock his time, so we had up and running. We had our guy in Sydney on standby as well, and I had the chance to validate the plan. So the one thing we did find is the communications tool we used is from a small supplier in New Zealand, and I don't know if other people experienced it as well, but even though we sent out a text, some people actually didn't get their text for like 6 hours. So we're implementing a new program that'll overcome that. We also had a couple people think that they didn't need to reply back, even though it said, please reply back, which is interesting. So it's sort of in the recovery stage. We found that our tools and our systems worked really well. We didn't have any impact on support. And the interesting thing was, and maybe it was a novelty, but productivity levels actually increased over the week. People got more work done. We didn't do the 5-minute Post quiz that usually takes us 20 minutes. We argue over answers all the time. But, you know, productivity actually went up. But people's enjoyment slipped. So by Monday, they were ready to see each other's faces again, which is just amazing. And a really large IT supplier in Wellington confessed that after the Kaikoura earthquake, they realized they only had 100 VPN licenses for 1,500 staff. We only had 10 for 30. So we had to have people dipping in and out all the time. So we now have rectified that problem. Yeah, so during the BAU, as soon as everybody got back in the office, it was like rejoicing. We're all together again. Let's have morning tea. And also our customer satisfaction has not really been impacted by it at all because our projects were able to carry on and support services were there as we expect. And we're now in sort of the validation stage, so we're implementing a new comms platform, drinking our own champagne, as it were. We're updating, I call it a strategy, but it's more a manual. Updating our working remotely manual so that it is as current as it possibly can be. And we replaced our VPN solution. I already mentioned maintaining our plans, and validation is an ongoing thing. Now I was reflecting on, thanks Glenn for this. I was reflecting on this as a way of sort of wrapping up my talk, and I was looking for evidence of some of these indicators and actually where were we on these. And with the exception of breaking silos, because I couldn't really find an example, I was really pleased to see a glimmer of most of these resilience indicators had flowed through some of our activities during that 5-day exercises. And I guess in closing, I would say that every organization needs to understand, oh, I'm taking his minute.
No, that's fine.
Everyone has to acknowledge that organizational resilience is imperative. You have to understand that it is a journey. It's important to know where on that journey you may happen to be, but importantly, you also have to know where you're going to go and how you're going to measure that. Thank you.